Well, hello, Metro Life family, and to our online virtual campus members, welcome to Metro Life TV Transformation in 10 on this Wednesday when we're recording this live. It's the Wednesday after Resurrection Sunday, and I want to give, especially our online viewers, an update. We had some technical issues that were my fault. You got to take ownership, right? So they were my fault this past Sunday as to why the message didn't get posted here on our YouTube channel, so my sincere apologies for that. And I appreciate your patience. So what I want to do on today's edition of Transformation in 10 is to take a few minutes to unpack a couple of the key themes out of this past Sunday's Resurrection Sunday service. By the way, if you like to listen to the messages, you can access the podcast. So even though we don't have the video available, the audio message from Sunday is actually in its entirety on our podcast. You can find it on the Metro Life Church FL app, in the app stores, Metro Life Church Florida. On the website at metrolifechurch.us, you will find our podcast there. Just hit the podcast link around the middle part of the page just below there, and you can access the full message. But what I want to do today is just to unpack a couple of key points. If you weren't in service with us, then you don't know, but we took the passage for Sunday's message out of Luke 24, when Jesus, beginning in verse 12 and 13, shows up to two disciples who are walking on the road to Emmaus, and they're moving from Jerusalem to Emmaus. And so it tells the story, verses 12 and 13 on down towards the end of the chapter, of these two disciples who are bound in disappointment, confusion, and grief. They're processing it. They're on a 7-mile journey from Jerusalem to Emmaus. Emmaus is a place called Hot Springs, or hot baths. There were natural springs that occurred there that were warm baths that people would resort to that town. It's kind of like a resort town people would go to for the purpose of relaxation and rejuvenation. And so there's some real powerful symbolism in that these two going to Emmaus, and because what it's telling us is that they're headed, like we are, in seasons in our journey where we're dealing with disappointment, confusion, uncertainty, some of the tough stuff that we process at times on the journey of the Lord moving us into something brand new, that we can be on the road to rejuvenation, to restoration, to recovery. We're on a pathway to hope, but because of the tough stuff we are processing, we're unable to see it. And so they didn't even realize that this was Jesus. And so as they are talking and communicating with one another, they think he's a stranger. So he asked them, "Why are you so sad? Why are you talking this way?" And for time's sake today, I'm not going to unpack the whole story. Again, you can catch the full message on the podcast at metrolifechurch.us or on the app. Also, in the App Store, the iTunes Store, our podcast is there under the Metro Life Church podcast. But what I want to do today is just take a couple of things out of that passage and encourage you to spend some time devotionally in it. The main takeaway is this: sometimes we're processing deep disappointment. A door closed, or something we were believing or hoping for didn't seem to turn out the way we thought it would. Disappointment. And this is the dominant state of mind that these two disciples were in on the road to Emmaus. And it's a very difficult time for them. It's a very difficult journey. But yet what they don't see is that Jesus shows up in his resurrected form, the resurrection and the life. And that's a word for us, because when you're in relationship with Jesus, he is the resurrection and the life, and because he dwells in you by his Spirit, there is resurrection life in you. And there are even seasons when we've been through disappointment, confusion, maybe we're even burned out. You see, burnout's a real thing. Sometimes even in our faith, we don't lose faith, but we lose hope, and lost hope leads to burnout. Spiritual burnout, emotional burnout. It doesn't mean you walk away from your relationship with the Lord. It just means that your hope tank is empty because of disappointment. But what we don't see, just like they didn't see it, when we're in those seasons, is that the resurrection and the life, who is Jesus, resurrection life, is moving to turn our doors of disappointment into doors of newness. Let me say that again. Somewhere in your journey, and I don't mean to say this in a way that would undermine the difficulties or challenges that you experience or have been through. Listen, we all have them. And to deny the fact that we experience disappointment is actually, it's not just to deny reality, though that's part of it, but in addition to that, it denies Jesus the opportunity to get real deep in our lives and to help us unpack and deal with those deep disappointments that maybe we've tried to just not pay attention to because it's too difficult. And as the resurrection and the life, he comes to us in those seasons and says, I want to raise you back up. I may not have allowed it to work out the way you thought it would, but it doesn't mean that I'm done with you. In fact, you're on the road to a new beginning, but because of the disappointment you're processing, you're just not aware of it yet. And so he comes to bring resurrection life to them, and ultimately he does when they get where they're going, and he sits down and he takes the bread and he blesses it and breaks it and he gives it, and the scripture says he was known to them, revealed to them in the breaking of bread, and it changed everything. I mean, transformation in the instant is what happened for them. Jesus is the resurrection and the life, not just, thank God for this, but not just and only in the ultimate resurrection from the dead. Thank God for that promise and hope. But in the journey in this life, he is resurrection life for us. That's one of the powerful things about being in faith and a covenant faith relationship with the Son of God, is he's the resurrection and he's the life. And in those seasons when we are dead inside because a door of disappointment has slammed in our face, he comes to us like he did Cleopas and the other disciple on the road to Emmaus and says, you may not be aware of it right now, but you're on a journey to restoration. You're on a pathway of hope, even though you can't feel it because of the disappointment you're processing. And what I want to tell you is by the time I'm done, I'm going to bring resurrection power and speak resurrection life into the broken places, and your door of disappointment is going to give way to a door of newness, and there are new beginnings that are ahead of you. I want to say this strongly today on a prophetic level, that I know in my spirit that though you have been through something that has emptied you, disappointment, and maybe you've even struggled to process it, I'm here today as with a word from God to encourage you. God is not done with you. He may open a completely different door that you weren't expecting. You see, what disappointment does is it hides the larger plan that God is working. And sometimes God allows a door to close or a disappointment to occur because it's not his best for us. And so when we have an emotional investment and an emotional attachment to a particular door or season or relationship or opportunity or hope intended outcome, and it doesn't go the way we thought it would, it takes us to a place of emptiness and possibly even burnout. They're burned out, but they said to one another, didn't our hearts burn within us while he was talking to us while we were walking on the road to get here? You see, so it's also a sign that the resurrection and the life, who he is on a personal level. He got real personal with them, and I'm here to tell you today he's going to get real personal with you in those personal areas of disappointment, of disillusionment, of burnout. I'm talking to somebody today, you're burned out. You love Jesus, but you're battling burnout. And what I'm here to tell you is he is going to give you your burn back. Your heart's going to begin to burn again. That's passion. The root word there, burn, in the scriptures literally means to ignite a flame. Yes, you're going to have a passion restoration. Remember, there in Emmaus, the place of hot springs, of warm baths, of recovery and restoration. And Jesus, being the resurrection and the life, brings recoveries and restorations that only he can make happen. Those who are watching this right now, and I just got a strong word in me, I'm going to release this and I'm going to let it sit with you for today. Those who've been burned out are going to burn again. The resurrection of the life is giving you your burn back. They said, didn't our hearts begin to burn in us? Even though we didn't recognize who he was, God started a rebirth in us. Somebody watching this, I'm here to tell you prophetically, you're moving into a time of a rebirth in your life. Something that the Lord has appointed for the season you're stepping into. You're going to move into it, and it's going to be dynamic, and it's going to be unstoppable, and it's going to be transformative in how the Lord himself gets personally involved in those areas where you've been burned out and broken down by disappointment and disillusionment. Strongly, I sense this today on a prophetic dimension, that burning of the Spirit of God, the burning of vision, the burning of passion, the burning of clarity and divine direction in those areas you have been struggling because you've been burned out and emptied, the Lord himself is going to give you your burn back. A supernatural recovery is coming to you. It's coming to your hope. It's coming to your energy level. There's even a rejuvenation that's coming to your body. Your body, your soul, your mind are coming back to life because the resurrection and the life has an appointment with you. I'm reminded, as I wrap this up, that as Jesus caused their hearts to burn in them, centuries earlier when Moses at 80 was completely burned out, the very thing God used that wanted to reignite the burn of destiny, the burn of vision, the burn of passion and calling and hope in Moses after he'd spent 40 years in regret and contending with himself over having killed the Egyptian and destroyed what he thought was his destiny. In Exodus chapter 3, when God begins the process of helping Moses bounce back and come back strongly from burnout into the most effective era of his life, the next 40 years are literally going to be his best, most productive 40 years, but he doesn't see it. So what God does is God uses a burning bush to ignite a burn in Moses' heart. Something that died in you is coming back to life because the resurrection and the life himself has appointed the time you're coming into where he's stepping in. He's been on the journey with you, but your burnout and your disappointment hasn't allowed you to process that. You haven't seen what God's been up to. But I'm here to tell you, you may be burned out and disillusioned by doors of disappointment. But you're going to burn again with the hope, the expectation, and the passion of the fire of God igniting your soul. And passion is going to become the fuel of a fire that he starts in your life. And you may have been burned out. Maybe even for an extended season, you've been battling burnout. But I'm here to tell you, the Lord himself, through the power of the Holy Spirit, he's rebirthing a burn in you. And those doors of disappointment are giving way to doors of new beginnings. Look for it. It's coming. You'll never be the same. The transformative work of the resurrection and the life is going to hit your heart with a fire that comes from God himself. I'm excited about what God's up to with you. You may have been burned out and broken by disappointment, but your best days and the blessed days of God are coming mightily upon your life. Thanks for connecting.